Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Method to the Madness. I'm your host, Mitchie, and joining me as usual is Patrick.
Hello.
And this week, or not this week, this fortnight or month or whatever it's become now, we're covering Schindler's List, the epic 1993 film directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Liam Neeson, Ralph Fiennes, and Ben Kingsley. This film is potentially one of the most well-known films of our era, I would say, Patrick, like as in the last 30 years, roughly. Yep. And it will exist like that forever. It is a legendary film, and it is rightfully so. Let's start off with first opinions, as usual. Patrick, what do you think of this movie? How'd you come about it? Is this your first time or second time? Whatever, blah, blah, blah.
This is my second time watching it. I first watched this in high school.
Yep.
When I was beginning my adventure into the world of film. And to your point about how this is a legendary film, when you think of prestige cinema, it's this film and The Shawshank Redemption are the two that, like, everyone knows.
I don't even like Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, but, like, you agree with me that it's kind of in the same pocket, right? Of, like, even your parents who don't watch movies have seen at least those two films. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right, yeah.
So, I was beginning to my foray into the world of film, and I saw this, and you know what, like, I've said on this podcast many times, I was a dumb fucking kid, like, I registered what was going on. I didn't connect with it very emotionally that much. That completely changed this time, however. Like, I was so taken aback by how much it resonated with me, just the reaction it drew from me, particularly that sequence when they're invading the boroughs. What do you call them? The ghetto?
Yeah, the ghetto, yeah. Liquidation of the ghetto.
Yeah, man, just all the people, like, struggling. It's hard to articulate, just the what pervades this movie is just like the struggle to hold on to humanity and to your life. And I don't know, it's this is a phenomenal film. I think, I think its importance can't be overstated either as a portrayal of and a reminder, a necessary reminder of, what Nazism was, what the Nazis were. And the fact that Steven Spielberg is a populist filmmaker and he was able to make this film so accessible to, like, the masses, and how it's just in the milieu of media, and how you said that everyone knows it. I think that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. For me, I watched it when I was, for the very first time, many years ago. I was quite young, and I've always had an interest in war stuff when I was a kid. It's just something I've always liked, and obviously that comes along with the Holocaust too, unfortunately. And I've, always had an interest in Holocaust films, and this by far is easily the best Holocaust film ever made. I can say that with certainty. We can name some others, but they're nowhere near as good as this one. I just think this movie is just so perfect. Like, it's on my favorite movies list, and there are movies I like much more than this because personally I like them more. But honestly, on that list, this movie is one of the movies where it truly is like a perfect film, where you can't really flaw it anyway. There's no one out there that would be like, oh, but, it's a good movie, but I don't like it because of A. And it's like, well, you can't do that. Like, there is seriously nothing wrong with it. It's just a clean film that's perfectly made, and it's just great. And the reason why you can tell that straight away, it's a really long fucking film. Like, it's longer than a Lord of the Rings film. It's 3.5 hours. And yet you watch it and it doesn't feel like that at all. And to be able to watch something for 3.5 hours and not get bored by it, unless it's like Friends or something like that, where you just binge watching episodes after episode, like in a film, to be able to do that means that already it's achieved something that not many films can do. And I think that's something that should be, noted. I also think that, just the portrayal of everything is just so well done. We'll get into it, but, like, you've got this perfect villain because he's not this ultimate evil human. He's kind of this strange, like, he's certainly a bad person, but he is ultimately a human. And that's really important in these things, because to be able to convey a point about something as barbaric as the Holocaust, something that is truly one of the worst things that has ever occurred on this planet, you need to be able to show that the people that did it were also human. Yeah. So anyway, perfect film. I absolutely think it's phenomenal. It's great, like you said, Pat.
What other Holocaust films are you comparing this to?
So the main one that comes to mind is The Pianist by Roman Polanski.
Yep.
It's not something I really enjoyed very much. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is quite a well-known one because that seems to be more relatable to like children.
Yep.
Because it's a book that was orientated towards children, and then they obviously made a movie out of it. And to be honest, that movie isn't very good. And then you've got other ones that are quite good, like Life is Beautiful. That's a very good film too, actually. But none of them are quite as good.
I was watching this earlier today with my roommate, and he was talking about how Life is Beautiful is one of his favorite films of all time. So
yeah, it's a very good film.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't quite cut it like Schindler's List does. And I have a few reasons for that, which we can get into. Yeah, let's get into a plot summary. Pat, you can read it. Go on.
All right. So, Schindler's List is centered around the infamous Krakow ghetto, when the German occupiers forced the local Jewish population into a several-block area in the Polish city of Krakow. Oskar Schindler is a German businessman looking to capitalize on the occupation of Poland. As a member of the Nazi Party, he is in good terms with the local SS and comes to an agreement to begin an enamelware factory using Jewish people for cheap labor. His right-hand man, Itzhak Stern, is using this opportunity to save as much of his Jewish community. As the war progresses, the Jewish people are gradually deported to concentration camps, one of them being the Plaszow concentration camp, headed by Armon Goeth. When the camp is completed, Armon Goeth is charged to liquidate the Krakow ghetto. As the atrocities of the Nazis become more apparent, Schindler gradually becomes sympathetic towards his Jewish workers and tries to keep them in his factory and save their lives. He bribes the SS officers greatly for this. At the end of the war, to prevent the murder of his Jewish workers at Auschwitz-Birkenau, Schindler moves his factory to the occupied Czechoslovakia, where it is safe under the guise of starting a munitions factory for the German war effort. The factory exists until the end of the war. The German occupiers leave and the Jewish workers are free. They show their gratitude for Schindler by crafting a ring for him, and Schindler leaves to begin a new, poorer life in post-war Germany. The end.
Alright, what was I saying before? Yes, something about Spielberg. This is our first Spielberg film, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of retired now, I think. He doesn't really do much anymore.
Yeah, he's retired in the sense that Ghibli dude is retired.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
Yeah. He keeps helping out on shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Ghibli dude. Miyazaki.
I forgot his name.
Hayao Miyazaki. Anyway, this movie is incredibly successful, right? And in the same year, this director, Spielberg, released Jurassic Park, and that was also incredibly successful. Man, like, this guy was just, like, full-on, like, back in the day, back in the 90s, he was just directing movies all the time. Like, how do you direct this and Jurassic Park in the same year?
Yeah, goddamn.
That takes some goddamn dedication, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about him. Like, he's a very good director. I think his movies will just live in the Hall of Fame of cinema and culture, really, forever.
You can't touch him.
Yeah. So just a couple quick questions. What do you think of the use of black and white in this film? And also the fact that Spielberg chose to use English speaking, right? But they have German accents.
Yeah.
It's something that's overlooked, but it's quite important.
Yeah. It stopped me at a couple points because I thought it made sense when they were with the German officers were with the Polish Jews, because, you know, they would, I thought English would be their middle language, you know, so that made sense. And then Oscar and Armon started talking in English, and I was like, oh, so they're doing this thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know what, like, I like it in this movie, but I'm generally not a huge fan of that. I really like it when they either speak the actual language or commit to just speaking in their normal accents and just implying tacitly that they are speaking another language.
Right, yeah.
So a good example of this is in The Death of Stalin.
Yeah.
It's obviously set in Russia, but they all just the actors speak in their normal English or American accents, yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking of the Chernobyl mini-TV series, and it's the same in that. They have British accents,
yes.
like just standard accents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to do because he specifically does give them German accents. Like Goeth, you know, the camp leader, acted by Ralph Fiennes, has this very strong German accent, and I don't know. To me, it kind of works. I think in a way that you couldn't put a Russian accent on, right? Like let's say you had Death of Stalin and they all had Russian accents, or Chernobyl, which is actually quite a serious mini TV series, and then you had them put Russian accents on. And I was listening to someone talking about this, and they're like, they chose to put British accents on because Russian accents seem almost kind of tacky almost.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't convey the same seriousness of the topic in Chernobyl.
Right.
In this, I don't know, it kind of sounds bad, but like to have the German accent makes it seem more legit. Like, like the Germans committed the Holocaust, arguably, the German speakers. And for Goeth to have quite a heavy accent, and like that kind of, but not too much where you can't understand him and it sounds like you're watching some like old man on some documentary. It kind of works in a strange way to me. It kind of carries his character a little bit more.
Yeah, no,
it would be strange if he had a British accent.
I agree, and that explanation you just gave is very good. Yeah, it works in this film for the reasons you said.
Yeah,
I agree that it was important to sort of keep conveying that they're Germans.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
But if you had German speaking the whole way, then the movie automatically becomes a whole lot less accessible, right? Like, and Spielberg especially doesn't seem like the kind of guy, a very American director, to release a German spoken film. And yeah, he compensates for that by having plenty of scenes in it where they only speak German, right? Like the scenes where more soldiers are talking, not main characters. And I think that's quite good. It's a perfect balance, really. And that authenticity kind of aspect is also, I think, why it works so well in black and white, because, it's the 40s.
Yeah, I thought so too. It seems very authentic. It also complements later films. Like, for some reason, I've got in my head Inglourious Bastards. They speak a lot of French and German in that film, which I really like.
Yeah, it's actually kind of uncanny how Goeth is very similar to Lander, is it, in Inglourious Bastards?
Lance Hander. I was also making that connection, yeah.
Like, the bit where he's talking, you know how Schindler kisses the Jewish girl, and then he gets in hot water over it, and then Goeth has to convince that guy, like, everybody loves him, and all this kind of stuff. The way he said, like, everybody loves him was exactly how Christopher Waltz does it in Inglourious Bastards. Like, it was so similar.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny.
He likes good-looking women. He sees a beautiful woman, he doesn't think. I mean, he has so many women. They love him. Yeah, they love him. I mean, he's married, but he's... All right, she was Jewish. She shouldn't have done it, but you didn't see this girl. I saw this girl, and this girl was, she was very good looking. They cast a spell on you, the Jews. When you work closely with them, like I do, you see this. They have this power. It's like a virus. Some of my men are infected with this virus. They should be pitied, not punished. They should receive treatment, because this is as real as typhus. I see this all the time. It's a matter of money.
You're offering me a bribe?
A bribe? No. No, please. It's a gratuity.
Okay, I don't know if I should bring this now. Do you have a bit you want to talk about for historical accuracy, or like?
Not necessarily.
Okay, well then I want to ask is Armand Goeth based on a real SS officer?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, same name, same guy. He was in charge of the Krakow Plateau concentration camp, and he was, summarily executed after the war, after being charged for the first person to be charged with homicide in a war crimes trial, actually, which is interesting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so yeah, he certainly was a real person, and there's actually an interesting bit where, as we know, at the end of the film, the real Schindler Juden, the Schindler Jews, they were actually brought into the film, right? Like the bit where they lay the wreaths and stuff on Schindler's grave. Mm-hmm. And obviously they were on set for part of it, and quite a lot of them had like a traumatic experience seeing Ralph Fiennes in uniform, because it just reminded them of the real guy. Which is pretty fucking, like, that's pretty sad, and not sad, but that's pretty morbid. Like, yeah. But I guess that's the kind of steps you need to take to ensure that you have a film covering such delicate topics, But yeah, he certainly was based on a real person. An interesting thing about this guy, right, was that he was in charge of this camp until June of 1944, I think, and he was actually fired, so to speak, from the SS, revoked of his rank and taken out of charge of the camp, because even the SS were kind of like thought he was just doing the wrong thing. Like he was not managing the camp well, and apparently he was stealing things for his own personal self as opposed to giving it to the Nazi regime. And yeah, he was actually revoked of his rank, and he was meant to be charged for this and put on trial later on, and it obviously never eventuated because of the end of the war. But it's kind of interesting how this guy, even the SS didn't like him.
Yeah.
This guy was contemptuous in all sorts of ways.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And did him and Oscar Schindler actually have like a friendship in real life, or
I don't think they really did.
Okay.
That's the one bit that's kind of
dramatized.
Yeah, it's I couldn't find anywhere in his biography about him meeting even Schindler, so I think that bit's dramatized. So in terms of historical accuracy, the whole Schindler thing is real. Like most of this is a true story, but I think they kind of blended the camp / Schindler bit together, maybe to accentuate the fact that Schindler needs to work really hard to save these people because he needs to save them from concentration camps and ultimately Auschwitz. So yeah, that's what you got to do in film, I guess.
I really like their relationship in this film. Like it's you actually get a clear hero villain story here.
Yeah,
and I've just found like their relationship is really compelling because of how Goeth reacts to it. That has that bit where he's pardoning people.
Yeah,
and he seems to be like trying his best out of I don't know what, like is it out of goodness or is it out of like him trying to get more power, because that's what like Oscar said to him, is power is like pardoning people.
Yeah,
and his motivations are really grey and unclear.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
but just how impressionable he is like really fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, I mean that also is partly to do with Schindler himself too. So Schindler himself is just such a charismatic guy, that kind of exudes this, I don't know, a little bit more kind of subdued power kind of thing. Like he doesn't hold the same power as the SS because of course he's not in the SS, but you can just tell by the way he speaks that people just respect him straight away, and you don't want to fuck around with this guy. And the key scene for that is when Stern gets locked up on the train and he has to get him off the train.
Yeah.
And those two guys are like, "What the fuck do you want? We're not getting him off, blah blah blah." And then he's like, "Oh well, okay, I can guarantee you that the both of you will be in southern Russia by the end of the month." And they're like, "Oh fuck!" And then they help get him, right. And like, they don't even know this guy. I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't. Otherwise, they would have got him off straight away. So, but the fact that he said that and with such authority, people just respect this guy. And I think that's why Goeth also really respects him too. And the key thing I think as well is that Schindler seems to show gratitude. And there's a big kind of key theme in this movie of this idea of what gratitude means. And they throw it around a lot where Schindler says, like, for your cooperation, you have my gratitude. And it's quite a regular thing he says during the movie. And Goeth brings it up. He's like, people say that you actually show gratitude. You actually mean it when you say thank you. And I think that's why he has strong respect for this guy. You know, and listens to him.
It's weird because that's like a big thing with the Nazis, right? Is like courtesy and manners, I guess. And
yeah, that's an interesting thing about this, like this comparison between like the barbarity of SS crimes, Nazi crimes, but then like on the surface they try and appear like these very cultivated people, and a part of that is because the German culture is cultivated, like it's not to say that the Germans were barbarians before the Nazis. Like they were very well-respected cultural people in the last couple hundred years, but the SS is kind of like the antithesis to that culture. It's just like the complete opposite of what they're trying to stand for. They do the opposite of culture. They do just atrocious crimes.
And then you see this trope in villainy of carried on like to this very day of villains being kind of classy people, like
yeah.
I don't know if Nazism is the source of that, but I don't know, it seems to be.
Yeah, it's certainly at least a big influence on that idea. While we're talking about Armand Goeth, to me, I reckon he is like one of the best film villains ever. I know he's based on a real person, but the way Ralph Fiennes portrays him, the way Spielberg intended to portray him, is just so good that he is literally, like, I can't think of many other film villains that are this good. Like, he's just so good. And the main reason for that is just because he's not some evil ass dude, like let's take for example Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. I can't remember the character's name, but the evil guy with the fucking gas tank and he blows holes in their heads. Like, he's considered one of the best film villains of all time. But I personally think that Goeth is like better because he has a little bit more characterization in some ways, although I don't know, it's kind of arguable, but this guy, you know, he's like obviously, you know, inherently evil in some way, or not evil, but like bad person, you know, and he's got these opinions of Jewish people which are very wrong. He does these weird things that like, and you're like, why? What does he even mean? And like, for example, why does he tell the girl at the start, like, I've got a cold, don't come near me? Like,
yeah,
you know, isn't that kind of weird? Like, this guy doesn't give a shit about Jews, right? Like, that's what he stands for, yet he's kind of like, I don't want to spread my cold to you.
Well, that's so he's a child, right? Like, he's a man-child. He's kind of, as I said, like, he's very impressionable. I think because he's in this position of power in the Nazi party, that he has a lot of presumptions about himself. But like, you know, I think. And that's the great thing. That's the great contrast between his characterization and his actual character, is that they're at odds. Like that scene where he's in the basement with Helen Hirsch.
Yeah.
And you know, he's kind of like just talking to himself, having this internal debate of like, where he's like, oh, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but he's sort of like, you know, are you an actual person? Is it wrong for me to think that you're an actual person?
Yeah.
And like, you know, he's very lost, and I don't know, it almost seems like he has no agency, you know what I mean? Like, he's very petulant and childlike in that way, and I think that's true. We kind of sympathize with him.
We do to some degree, because that becomes more apparent in the scene when Schindler's kind of like, oh, where are we going to send her? And he's like, oh, you know, I want to take her back to Austria with me and we can grow old together. But then Schindler's like, you know, you can't do that. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I can kind of like imagine or dream that it will happen. And yeah, it's sad in a way. Like, this guy, you know, I don't really know his background very well, but presumably he's been Nazified pretty well during the last 12 years. And he's been told that Jews are bad people, but then he gets taken up by this powerful force that is love, you know, that you know, can take anyone at any moment, no matter who you are. And I think that's also a powerful thing to show that this racism and all that kind of thing is bullshit, because anyone can fall in love with anyone like that, even if you're taught to hate these people. And it's just sad, you know, like he just wants to do that, but he can't. And for a second there, it's almost like he disagrees with the Nazi regime.
What bit says that, or like tells you that? Like
when he's saying like, I want to take her back to Austria and stuff, you know, it's like he wants to do something that's completely counter to what the Nazis stand for, because those feelings he has for her are more powerful than his loyalty to the Nazi party, which, considering, you know, what we've seen of this man, what he's done this whole time, like, you know, like it's I'm not saying we should sympathize with this man really, because, you know, of what he has done, but there's a part of him, you know, that's kind of influenced by something nothing to do with the Nazis, and that does the one thing that makes him the perfect villain. It shows you that he is a human being.
Yeah, I agree.
And then what I like about, and like you said about the hero-villain thing, it's true, but the hero-villain thing becomes more apparent in the second half of the movie, because by that point, Oskar Schindler is a hero. But what I love about Schindler is that he's clearly not a hero at the start of this movie. Yeah. This man is just a cold, callous businessman. He, you know, he has a contemptible moral compass. He only uses the Jews to run this enamelware factory because simply they are cheap to pay. No other reason. He just wants to make more money for himself. And, you know, even on the family front, he cheats on his wife and obviously doesn't have too much respect for her. You know, like he's not a likable man if you know exactly his intentions, although everyone loves him because he has lots of money. And yet that all changes over the course of the movie. And by the end of it, man, like the scene where he breaks down sobbing over he could have saved another person with the lapel pin. Like, it's, you know, one of the most moving scenes in cinema, and you know, that's the man he becomes from, and that's all changed from the beginning of the movie of the kind of man he was. Yeah,
I do love how kind of despicable he is at the beginning. There's this great edit where he's in bed with his wife, you know, and she's like, promise me that no one will ever mistake me as not your wife and I'll stay. And then it just cuts to her on a train. Yeah. you don't need anything to tell you, like, you know, how that conversation went. It's so good.
What about the bit when he walks out of the restaurant with her, and then the valet guy, he's like, calls her Miss, and then he's like, oh no, she's Mrs. Schindler. And then he just looks at him like, oh yeah, and then like gives him like this real awkward look back, like, oh shit, because he's obviously been in the same place with heaps of other women.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's he's certainly not a likable person. And I think that begins to change during the liquidation scene, because he can finally see the atrocities that the Nazi party commits. You know, I suppose he's probably well aware of the anti-Judaism in Nazism in general, but once he sees the liquidation and people being murdered and whatnot, I think that's when it kind of clicks for him, like being able to see that kind of stuff with his own eyes. And I guess the girl in a red dress, to me, what that just symbolizes, her color, that kind of stuff, you know, very well-known bit of Schindler's List, is that girl is the reason why Schindler changes. You know, he sees all these atrocities committed, but he seems to be very focused on this young little girl. And I think that's the bit when he realizes, like, shit, yeah, I am not part of a good cause at all.
I saw it as a really flexible metaphor, which I guess you could extrapolate to that reading you just said. But yeah, like just the fact that it's, you know, the only color in a black and white film, it's meant to, you know, have a salience to it. It's meant to draw your eye to it, and like, you know, that could represent so many things. Some sort of like kindred spirit amongst, you know, all this treachery and like
innocence.
Abominable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just something out of its place, you know. Yeah. Something is not right. Yeah. So, yeah.
I suppose there's a lot of ways to interpret it, and doesn't mean it's wrong, even if the director wasn't quite intending that.
In HBO's Watchmen TV series, it's an alternate reality. Yeah. And instead of making Schindler's List, Spielberg made a film about the giant alien landing in New York, and they have a scene where they talk about they have the same little girl in a red dress scene in a black and white film, but it's it's pretty funny.
Man, what a parallel. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I don't know what Watchmen is about, but obviously some sort of parallel universe.
You'd love it.
10 more people. There's been 2 people. This is gold. 2 more people. You would have given me 2 for it. At least 1. You would have given me 1. 1 more. 1 more person. A person, Stan. For this. I could have got 1 more person. And I didn't. I didn't.
Just, I mean, this is a pretty, like, kind of broad leap, but why specifically were the Jewish people the main victims in Nazism?
So the way I understand it, and I'm not a historian, but the Jewish people were quite segregated in Europe in general, because the Jews were people that had migrated from that area of the globe to Europe many years ago. And obviously, you know, to some stupid people, that makes them feel like that they need to hate them or use them as an excuse for anything bad that happens to them. And it's quite common throughout history that the Jews have been quite, you know, there's always been racist tendencies towards them. And that's evident in lots of different places. But like, you know, like pretty much every country had some problem with the Jews. And there've been Jews killed before the Holocaust. So probably the most prime example are the pogroms in the 20s. Now, pogrom is like a specific word used for any lynching of like Jewish communities, where you just go in and trash their place or kill them or whatever. You know, like it's you know, it's that common, I guess, that it's almost got its own word. But in Russia, during the Stalinist era, I think it was Stalin, or during the communist era anyway, in the 20s, they actually committed a couple of times where they just went around and just broke up these Jewish communities. I think it also happened during the Tsar regime as well. So it's something that's always been the case. And it's a question in history whether, if the Nazis didn't arise, would the Holocaust still have occurred? And some people say, no, it took the Germans to be able to do this because of their culture, blah, blah, blah. But personally, I don't believe that. I think that, you know, the Holocaust could have happened with any country, because for some reason they all had this problem with them. Just unfortunately, German coming off World War One and having this backstory that led to the growth of this authoritarian Nazi regime led by a bunch of people that really hate the Jews. It just led to the Holocaust. But it's something that's always been the case.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because the xenophobia of just one specific group of people always seemed very strange to me.
It is, yeah.
They allied with the Japanese and like people who look very different from them. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, look, Nazism is a very twisted thing, and if you actually read things about it, you realize how fucking stupid it was. It literally doesn't make any sense. The policies and their ideas that just contradictory to each other. It seriously is a policy regime of just people just trying to get power for themselves. That's all it is. There's no faithful basis to anything in Nazism. It's all a load of crap.
Yeah, interesting.
Which brings me on to one thing about this movie. What I like about Schindler's List is that it really portrays how stupid Nazism is. And the key scene to this is the snow digging scene. When the Schindler they walk into the factory, and then a bunch of SS kind of rock up on their trucks and are like, dig the snow from the street. And then there's a scene afterwards where Schindler's talking to the main SS guy, and he says to Schindler, some of the officers here don't give a damn about production. For them, it's a matter of national priority that Jews be made to shovel snow. It's got nothing to do with reality. You know it and I know it. Jews shoveling snow, it's got a richer significance. This perfectly encapsulates the Nazi regime. It's this idea where the SS officers were so corrupt. And I've got a question for you, actually, like, Patrick. Like, when you think of the Nazis, what do you think, really? Like, aside from, obviously, the bad stuff, like, committed the Holocaust and stuff like that, but in terms of the regime itself, do you think that they're efficient?
No, I think it was just like, it was a big old club, is how I see it.
Yeah.
People like consolidating their power, like celebrating just power, like as in general, just like as an abstract concept. They're like, I don't know, just this like bundle of power grabbing, pretty much.
Thugs.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
But yeah, the Nazi party were just a bunch of thugs that were just trying to get one over each other. Like, and in terms of their efficiency, I think this is a key thing I'm kind of pointing to in this movie, is that this shoveling snow business is kind of like why did they make him shovel snow? They had no reason. Some SS officer felt like it was the right thing to do because he had a little bit more power. And at the time of when the Jews were walking down the street, he could be like, make those Jews shovel snow because I got nothing better to do. And that's just what had to happen because of this one SS officer that wanted to do that, right? And to me, that doesn't seem efficient at all. When I think of the Germans during World War II, you'd think that, most people might think like efficiency, like the military, they have a chain of command, like, people respect the rank and stuff like that. But then when you see this movie and how the SS officers are trying to really contradicting each other's orders and doing dumb shit like that, it really shows that it's not an efficient system.
Maybe it has the illusion of efficiency because they didn't think things through.
Yeah.
Like they just did shit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it might come down to that, to not thinking properly. But a lot of it honestly does come down to just a really fucking inefficient system. Like when you get into the details of how stupid it was all about paperwork, and Nazism. It was like, if you wanted to do this, you had to get it approved by this guy, then get this form signed and get this form signed. And it's like, in terms of bureaucracy, that's the kind of thing we think about when we think of democracy, right? Like, you want to pass something in today's, era in Australia, it takes fucking for ages because it needs to be like passed through Parliament, and a bunch of members of Parliament need to sign it. I don't really know, but the point is that it doesn't seem efficient, and I think we can most people agree on that because they know democracy is slower. And when you think of authoritarianism, like Germany, Nazi Germany, or even things like kings and queens and stuff like that, you think of efficiency because it takes this one man to give the order and then it gets done straight away because whatever he wants done is fucking done. But it clearly wasn't the case in Nazi Germany, and that's a very interesting kind of counterintuitive understanding of that regime. It doesn't really make much sense. And a good example of that is when Schindler wants to get Stern off the train, and they don't want to get him off, and obviously they do because they don't want to get sent to Russia. And when the guy's trying to justify to himself or to Schindler, like, oh, I was only doing my job, and he says it's the inconvenience to the list, the paperwork, that's the problem. Like, to them, the paperwork is such a big deal to them that they can't be fucked getting down off the train, you know, and that to me kind of summarizes Nazism.
Yeah, I guess it adds to that illusion of sophistication that they see themselves having.
Yeah, exactly.
Puts them above, you know, the Jews and stuff, like the unsophisticated people.
Yeah, true. I guess paperwork has kind of that associated with it. Yeah.
Mate, what is more classy than bureaucracy?
Yeah, but it doesn't. You'd think. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, you'd think though that an authoritarian regime wouldn't have much bureaucracy, but the Nazis certainly did. I got one more thing.
Yeah,
I know we're running along. I know we've kind of talked about comparing this to other Holocaust films, but one reason why I think Schindler's List is so successful as a Holocaust film, and I believe is the best Holocaust film made yet, is because it has intentional humor in it, and this humor, like we got the humor when, you know, Schindler and his wife, like we talked about, you know, that kind of humor, or when he's trying to get Stern off the train and you know, he says, oh yeah, you'll be in southern Russia by the end of the month, and then it cuts to the three of them looking for Stern on the train, right? You know, and that's like classic Spielberg humor. Like he does that that kind of humor. I don't know, it's like likable humor that everyone would understand, but there's nothing like too adulty about it or anything like that. It's good, but he also has humor during a liquidation scene. You know, we both know it, like the piano playing,
right?
Like,
yeah,
they're just playing the piano nonchalantly while they're literally murdering people upstairs. Or when the two soldiers are carrying that like kid, and then the guy just shoots the kid between them.
Yeah,
and then in German, they have this altercation, and if you translate it, he basically says, "Oh, are you crazy? You could have killed me. You're such an idiot." Blah 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 blah. And it's like that kind of humor, like it's almost very morbid and dark, and doesn't seem like something that should be in a Spielberg film, but it's not. It's almost funny in a sort of kind of weird way. But the point is that it really shows that the Nazis, the anti-Semitism was so rampant that they really just didn't give a shit about these people, that they were just happy to be playing the piano while they're liquidating a ghetto. Because between you and me, like, if I had to liquidate a ghetto, I wouldn't exactly be happy about it. I wouldn't just go up and play on a piano. Like, you know, that's kind of like, to me, I feel like it would severely torment me and traumatize me mentally, yet these people don't care, and that to me shows how bad it is.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I feel like it also makes it even more realistic.
Yeah, in
that sense, like at the end when Goeth is being hanged, I don't know, and they try to kick the stool out from under him, and they just can't do it. It takes like a couple tries.
Yeah,
those imperfections in cinema, I really like it, and it does make stuff a lot more realistic, I feel.
A better example of that is when Goeth goes to shoot that old man for not building the hinge quick enough, and then the gun never works.
Yeah.
You know, like a good 2 minutes of them just he keeps trying, and then he just hits him and gives up, which, you know, like, again, like, it's interesting. Like, I think humor is a very good way to actually portray serious topics. And, you know, obviously there's bad humor and there's sick humor when it comes to the Holocaust, but there's also, in this film, it's just executed perfectly. It's really, really, really good. And obviously when you compare that to like other films, like Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I don't know if you've seen it, but
I haven't.
Man, it's a pretty fucking morbid film. Like, the whole time you feel pretty down about it, which, fair enough, that's one way to portray the Holocaust, because the Holocaust certainly was a very bad event. But it all comes down to filmmaking. Like, if you want to make a good film, you got to have a roller coaster, you know, ups and downs. And certainly movies like Boy in the Striped Pajamas doesn't have that, but this film does.
You shouldn't think of them as yours, Oscar. You need to understand that some of the officers here don't give a damn about production. To them, it's a matter of national priority that Jews be made to shovel snow. It's got nothing to do with reality, Oscar. You know it, and I know it. Jews shoveling snow. It's got a ritual significance.
All right, what do we do now?
Recommendations? Yeah.
What do you got, Pat?
Okay, this recommendation is because I feel like it's interesting just to see, you know, what the evolution of this kind of topic has gone through time. I said it earlier, but Inglourious Basterds is an interesting film, man, because Schindler's List is, it's a great film and is totally necessary for a film like Inglourious Basterds to exist, where the tone of Inglourious Basterds is, kind of it's flippant, but it's able to do so without being disrespectful because we have these very serious films like Schindler's List.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, like, I love both of those films equally, and I don't know, it's interesting. I think it's directly tied to the existence of this film, so yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you got to have a bit of balance, and I guess that does come down to, like, humor's a weird thing. Yeah.
What do you got?
I got another Holocaust film, but it's a Russian-made one, 1985, and it's called Come and See.
Oh, I know about this.
I was recommended this a while ago. Yeah, it's a little bit... It's a very arty film. When you think arty kind of Kino kind of stuff, this is one of them,
Yeah.
It's got a lot of weird scenes in it and stuff like that, but it is a very, very... I don't remember it being humorous. It is a little bit more kind of like a morbid film, and it's quite long too, but it is like a film that is well recommended, and it's a very interesting Holocaust film. And it's not really the more camps kind of thing. It's more the Eastern Front, which is kind of a neglected side of the Holocaust. Like, when we think of Holocaust films, we think of, concentration camps, Auschwitz, like in Schindler's List, Boy in Striped Pajamas, and the Come and See is kind of showing the fact that no, the Holocaust, that's only a very small part of the Holocaust. The majority of Jewish people were killed in Russia on the Eastern Front in basically just being shot rather than being in camps. They just dug up ditches and killed a lot of people. And I think, this movie is a testament to that, to show that side of the story too.
Yeah, interesting.
All right. Where can people find us?
People can find us on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. You can visit our website at amttm.com. Follow our Facebook and Instagram links from there. And if you have any questions, queries, insights, or criticism, you can send them to mail@amttm.com.
And next time, what are we doing?
Next time, we are covering Casino Royale, the James Bond film, the 007 film, the first one with Daniel Craig. And David will be joining us for that one as well.
Yeah, and seems apt considering that the Daniel Craig series, his era is coming to an end very soon, whenever they release this goddamn movie. Jesus.
I swear Daniel Craig said he was going to retire 2 movies ago, but...
Yeah, he did say that.
Yeah.
But this is certainly his last one, I think. And considering how long we're waiting, it better be.
This will be my first James Bond film, so I'm pretty excited.
What?
I've never seen any 007 films.
What the fuck?
I feel like I've told you this.
No, I thought you'd at least seen a couple, or you just hadn't seen the good ones.
I have seen 0.
That's fucked. How have you not seen them? That's so fucked.
Just never got around to it. I was meant to watch Dr. No for film school, but I didn't.
Oh, no, fuck the old shit. This Daniel Craig stuff is mint, and this is actually a really good film, so yeah, I'm keen.
Yeah, I'm also keen.
Alright, join us next time. Bye.
See ya.